What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we are just off the Tesla conference call. I just got off the Q1 2021 call. Now I'm going to go through my notes from the conference call and give you basically my thoughts and ideas, reading in between the lines of what Elon and the team said. So I'll just walk you through my notes of the conference call and just all of the stuff I thought was super interesting. Elon does his little launch. Intro, talks about, all the challenges they had, such a great quarter. Interestingly, that he notes $1 billion in profit on a non-GAAP basis is a notable milestone as a record. But he notes that as one of the records. Talks about FSD a little bit, says that it's a really difficult problem. And they got rid of the radar, talks about how they have the 8 cameras, like having in the front of your eyes, side of your eyes. So love that stuff. And basically saying that, I don't know. I honestly thought Elon's tone here on the full self-driving was a little bit less confident potentially than it had been in the past, saying he's like, I'm quite confident we'll get this done. But it has this example of like a kayak with something dangling in the front, and then you're still driving with your kayak, but the neural net has to ignore the kayak. There's so many micro edge cases. So I think that's a huge, huge part of it. And then additionally, they talk about this chip shortage problem. One of the most difficult supply chain issues. Now, this is something I didn't see when I initially read the results, is that I think Tesla had a ton of actually material headwinds when trying to scale up production this quarter with the actual hardware supply chain. So the numbers this quarter were actually really strong. Tesla profitable once again, post solid margins, solid profit and all that stuff. But that's despite having this huge chip shortage, having the S and X have a bunch of delays essentially with the Plaid Model S and X. And then they had to do all this stuff where they got drive units out of Nevada, I think, which is a big part of that. And so Elon even says, this was one of the most difficult supply chains that we've had at Tesla. And despite that, they crushed it this quarter. And if you actually listen to the cadence of what Zach says about that on the call, he's like, well, we're going to have crushing it financially for the next 2, 3, basically Q2, and Q3 next year. With Q4, then we have all these new factories ramping. So our cost profile is going to increase. But it sounds like what I'm reading here is there is so many headwinds dampening the profitability and margins of Tesla this quarter that are one-time in nature because of this chip shortage and supply chain issues that made me super, super bullish on sort of these fundamental underlying economic trends with Tesla's sort of hardware margins. Additionally, Plaid Model S, we got confirmation from Elon that, okay, they're trying to get to volume production by Q3. That's the same time that Plaid Model X will start. And they think they can hit 2.5 thousand units a week potentially. That's like 150,000, or no, I think it's like 125,000 units a year. 2,000 a week is like 100,000 a year. But so this is the maximum level of S and X, and they think the demand is going to hit that again. So what I feel like in this quarter is this massive convergence of so many one-time trends hitting Tesla, and then incrementally throughout the next 3 quarters, or assuming that the factory ramps notwithstanding, but Plaid, Model S, and X are going to come back, roaring better margins every single quarter. Model Y continues to ramp. The chip shortage goes away. And even despite all of that, Kirkhorn mentions that adjusted, excluding auto credits, the auto gross margin went up sequentially in both year over year. So I think there's a huge, to me, this is making me super excited about just the profitability coming in Q2 and Q3 as some of those problems alleviate. And Kirkhorn goes into that a little bit more and says there was a $200 million COG tailwind in the Model S and X, basically because, they had to stop production. Plaid was a little bit harder to actually introduce than they wanted. So that was one thing that significantly hit the financials, but you wouldn't have known it if you saw the report. So I thought that was awesome. And then I bolded this part. He says we're on track for sustained industry leading operating margins. So this is the long-term guidance. I think that's super important to watch of Tesla is what level of profitability they think they can hit in the long term. Sustained industry leading margins. What does that mean? About 10 to 15% of every dollar in revenue that Tesla generates is going to flow to the bottom line. Now, he also talks about how they invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin and mentions they sold 10% of their Bitcoin position. I think this is super interesting. And then they explain a little bit more about how it's more liquidity. So it sounds like they sold 10% of their Bitcoin position to feel like what it would be like to sell if they had to. So I think that was really interesting. It's not like they're cashing out of their Bitcoin position, but it sounds like they were dabbling with the liquidity, and they've been very impressed with the liquidity of Bitcoin. And there's actually, he mentions a much more about Bitcoin later on in the call. Then we move into the Q&A. Question about Dojo. Will that become an AWS-like business? So this is really interesting. And you can tell Elon's pumped about it because it gets him ranting. But he talks about how there's so much real-world technology that Tesla's had to solve, and how the roads are built for neural nets. I love his analogy there of the human neural net with the brain and our eyes. And so the Tesla AI for Tesla to develop this self-driving car, they have to develop all of these technological challenges. It's like when you go to the moon, like you have to develop all these new technologies just to get to the moon that can be used for a gazillion other things besides just going to the moon. So Tesla, with their full self-driving software, it's not just full self-driving. There's a bunch of other things that are going to be able to happen with this once they've solved what Elon is saying is like the biggest real world problem. And so he talks about how they've kind of had to build from scratch and start developing this. We couldn't find a good supercomputer, so we built our own. We couldn't find good software, so we built our own. And they think that they can make this a system that's far safer than a human, obviously. And then that comes in Dojo. So now we had to build our supercomputer because we have 1 million cars throwing all this video data at us, soon to be 2 million cars throwing all this video data at us. How do we process all of that? They had to build this incredible training system. And the big breakthrough that it sounds like Dojo's on the cusp of is auto labeling. So instead of Tesla having humans label it, the Dojo computer is going to be labeled, like the AI is labeling it, and you just have humans making sure it's labeling it correctly. And then when the human is like, wait, Dojo, you messed up. That label was this. The Dojo learns. It's just like on autopilot when you have an intervention that gets sent back to Tesla and they learn. So I thought this was extremely fascinating, that just this kind of breakdown from Dojo from Elon Musk. And he thinks that the big breakthrough here, this is optimized for neural net training, and it will be an order of magnitude more efficient per frame of video, aka 10x more cost efficient in hardware and energy usage than the next best system we're aware of. 10x more efficient in cost and energy usage than the next thing they're aware of. So Tesla had to build this themselves. And then Elon's like, okay, well, what about renting this out? And I think this is kind of like when Elon says we could license out our AI software, when we could license out our battery tech. Like, it's theoretically possible. Is this going to move the needle ASAP? I think it's going to be very far away. But he says that neural net computing, and this is an interesting thing if you think about Amazon, AWS, all these Azure, all these businesses, neural net computing will become a bigger portion of that computing stack. And so as that becomes a bigger and bigger thing, what Elon's basically saying is the end market for neural net computing demand is booming. He's like, this is going to be a huge thing. This is going to be a bigger and bigger piece of the digital software stack of the world. And we are selling a service that could potentially be very, very valuable for that. Probably others will want it and we'll make it available, is the Elon quote that I wrote down. So now we have, and then he also talks about how in the long run, Tesla will be thought of just as much as a car and energy company as an AI robotics company. This is one of the first times you've heard Elon say this. I mean, this sounds like him tripling down. We have AI Day. They didn't mention that on the call, but it sounds like there's so many potential trends here that Elon is sort of tripling down on Tesla's AI division. And, you think about the roadmap of Tesla and what they are, like, it's always fluid. Like, you think Elon has this plan 100 years out and he's just doing it step by step. No, they're figuring out as they go. They're molding Tesla to fit the mission any way they can. And it's interesting to see this sort of triple down on robotics and AI become such a bigger and bigger part of the story. But that is here. I think this would be wild for Tesla to open up Dojo and let people rent it for more revenue. I think Tesla's not a customer service company. That's like what I said before this. So I feel like this is still very early in the stages. Like, let's get Tesla to I think one of the most profitable things that Dojo can be used for when you think about running these neural nets for, neural net computing becoming a bigger portion of the computing stack, it's driving. That's like the biggest first use case. And Tesla will not only own the supercomputer value of that, but will own the entire stack of that, the greatest AI advancement, that neural computing block that's growing will be from FSD, and Tesla will capture that value. So then they move on to the solar roof situation. Some customers have been complaining about the solar roof. Okay, what's really interesting here is Elon talks about how the solar roof is so much harder to install if you actually have to build these new structural parts of the roof. So some customers didn't have a good enough roof to handle the solar roof. They had to hike their price. But then anyway, that's not too important. The solar roof, my takeaway from this is it's really hard. Like, the roof business isn't software. Like, you literally have to go and build a roof. And so it's taking Tesla a while to figure out how to mass market this and really commercialize this on a mass scale at a good price point. They're still pushing and working through that. I think they'll get there. But then you talk about how Elon is talking about a distributed utility. And this is a kind of game-changing part of Tesla that's been brewing in the background that people don't realize, which is now you have to buy a Powerwall when you get solar panels. So this is really interesting because before, when you got solar panels or solar energy, you had to hook it up to your whole electrical system in your house. That was a whole headache. Elon even said it's like a unique piece of art. This is so interesting. And so now they're going to standardize it by having all your energy from your solar panels draw right into that Powerwall. And then that Powerwall interfaces with the grid. And so I don't know. I think this is kind of it's taken a while for Tesla's solar business and the technology of the batteries and the solar panels to get to this cost efficient level to have it sort of, all work and be seamless. But this is going to be a game changer. Like what Elon talks about as the demand for energy on the grid will triple as we all plug in our electric cars, as energy consumption grows, as semi trucks start to use energy. The electric, the propulsion technology of going from fossil fuels to electricity means the demand of electricity is going to be soaring. And so how do we accommodate for that? We can't just have the traditional grid. And that's why Elon kind of goes in this rant about like, you're going to forcefully inch by inch build this massive grid infrastructure. It's going to take forever. It's going to be a nightmare. That's what they've been trying to do. And so now this new thing, the Powerwall can act as this distributed utility and a buffer for the grid. So like Elon's use case here is in peak power times when all of a sudden the grid, like, you have to add more capacity to hit this peak power need, peaker plant, super pollutive. Instead, you can have this distributed utility of Powerwalls on auto bidder, click a button and have them buffer the grid. And so this is an incredible evolution of just the backbone of how our technology works, how our lights go on, that it's all this centralized grid, but it's about to go to this decentralized, much more robust network. And I think this is going to be a game changer. He didn't even talk about the revenue opportunities, but now you're getting paid. So, okay, I have solar, I have Powerwall. The part that Elon left out about this is now I can generate revenue. Now I can use AutoBidder to optimize my battery assets, to monetize them, to offset the cost of that battery. So if I'm getting paid to help stabilize the grid, that's going to help pay for my solar, pay for my Powerwall. And so I think we're in this really interesting use case where consumers are going to be able to generate their own energy and sort of play this arbitrage on the energy markets, all facilitated by Tesla. This is a game changer. And Elon Musk really harps on how profound this is. And I think it's huge. And he says how it must happen. Like if we're all going to have electric vehicles, we need this huge innovation at the grid level. So it's very, very exciting to see Tesla make this sort of radical move and basically take off, the Powerwall as its own item, because this is truly how to solve it, the solar with the Powerwall. So that's a very interesting business. And we all know Tesla Energy could be as big as the car business in the long term, but it's just going to take a while. And I think this was a huge, huge milestone towards getting there. So yeah, they asked about Bitcoin, which I think was awesome. This is what I wanted to be covered. And they're sort of really coy about it. Zach Kirkhorn says like, we're talking to Elon. We wanted somewhere to store our cash we didn't need right away. That was a better store of value. That's how we found Bitcoin. Okay, pretty legit theory. Is Dogecoin a game changer? We'll get to that later. Thanks for the super chat though. I don't think Dogecoin, it's not being taken seriously by Tesla right now, at least at the corporate level. I don't know. They didn't mention it. But Dogecoin or Bitcoin, he says, so far it's a good decision. Great place to store cash we don't need for daily operations. And they also wanted to test the liquidity though, because they wanted to see, okay, if we're going to have this asset, what is the liquidity of Bitcoin? And so that's why they did this sale, it sounds like, and tested it. And he's saying the liquidity is proven to be impressive. They have, it's been a good decision to buy Bitcoin so far. That first sale went smoothly. And so I think they're very excited, and they said basically with the remainder of their Bitcoin, they want to hold it for the long term, and they will hold the Bitcoin that they get from customer vehicles. So when you buy Bitcoin, they will hold on to that. And then he says, we are currently discussing lots of stuff, basically constantly discussing different schemes for the crypto market. When we are ready to make an announcement, one will come. And so this was, talk about reading between the lines and figuring out what the execs are up to. It's like, wait, did you just say that it's possible that Tesla will make some sort of crypto Bitcoin product announcement soon? Basically, they did. And so I thought that was one of the biggest tidbits to come out of the call is they were very open to not just buying and selling Bitcoin or buying and holding Bitcoin as a treasury asset, but integrating it more and more into their services. So I don't know. I thought that was that's a clue that I'm going to be following and diving into more. Okay, so then we move into another portion of the call, the super chat. This Ahmad guy with his Doge comments. I appreciate the super chat. I mean, Doge is interesting here. I mean, whether it's Bitcoin or Doge or Ethereum, it doesn't matter. If a crypto network gains adoption in the mainstream, it will require a significant amount of energy. A decentralized energy utility where you have your Powerwall that's storing your solar power that could also tap into that crypto mining network is sort of the holy grail. And so to me, that's almost the part of these two questions that the thread that was lost there is like, wait, so if we're going to have a distributed utility everywhere and we're holding Bitcoin and we might announce like why couldn't you just press a button if it's like, okay, here's what it is. Here's what it is. So your battery's at peak capacity, right? And now you're like, okay, I've been saving up for my battery. It's at peak capacity. I'm ready for the grid. If they need me, I'm going to help stabilize the grid, right? But then the grid's like, actually, like the peaker plant's like, or like we didn't even hit peak power today. So all that energy you stored, your power wall is maxed out because you were waiting to sell it back to the grid. And now the sun's about to come up and you're going to want to keep charging it, but it's full. So what are you going to do there? Because the grid didn't need it. Well, now you have a new option. Instead of wasting it, you can sell that excess energy and turn it into Bitcoin. Start mining because your power wall will have mining in it in theory. And then you can start, monetizing that excess energy on a crypto network. That's a game changer. That's that ARC paper that we were talking about in the pre-earnings live stream of like Bitcoin is a unique energy buyer that comes into the equation. And so when you talk about this decentralized utility that Tesla's building, the unique energy buyer of Bitcoin or whatever crypto is mainstream is a game changer for not only monetizing it by selling it back to the grid, but by monetizing it for mining. So now this is actually, I'm pumped we're doing this live stream now because now I'm thinking even more like it just makes so much sense for Tesla to integrate crypto mining into this new solar Powerwall product. I think that's coming, honestly. Like I would love to know what you think, because this to me seems, now I'm like in my head, it's making so much sense because the economics, it's all about economic friction. How much does it cost? How many years is it going to take for me to pay back my energy? But if you have another option for when your power wall is at full capacity and you miscalculated when you needed to charge it, or it didn't need, the grid needs you when the grid needs you. So you have to kind of be ready at their whim. That's one buyer. But now if there's another unique buyer of Bitcoin, anyway, I think I'm getting a little bit too wrapped up into this, but I think it's really true. Yo, Gally, do you think Tesla will get into wind? Excellent comment. And this is something I wrote down as well. We've seen Tesla and Elon mention wind like 4 conference calls in a row. This dude, they cannot stop talking. Every time Elon talks about solar, he like Salt Bay's a little wind mention in there. And so now I'm thinking like, and he also mentions in his solar analogy here as part of this answer, he actually says the whole US could switch to solar with basically 100 by 100 mile plot of solar energy and wind, where you can usually have solar, you can have wind. And so now it's like, all right, well, if Tesla's the renewable energy company and you keep mentioning wind and solar as these two intermittently generated assets where you have batteries to store them and that buffers the grid, when is Tesla getting into wind? I don't know. That's kind of a random thing, but I think that could happen as well. Trying to think about 4680 cells. So then we get into the 4680 cell. Pierre, one of the analysts, asked this question, and it's interesting that they basically boil it down to we're improving, we're making progress, we're 12 to 18 months away from volume production. So I think that's very, very interesting. The 4680 cell sounds like it's delayed, or not delayed, but it's just they're working through it. It's taking longer to ramp. They're not quite ready. The yield's not quite ready, or they're not perfect enough to be in vehicles. And when you think about this car is going to run hundreds of thousands of miles, going to need this battery to last, going to, all these little whatever. This isn't a real one, but it's just a replica. Like all this, tabless design that's touching the car, that's the structural pack. Like that can't be messing up once it's in a car. It's sealed in the pack. It's got to be perfect, got to go over bumps, got to be hot, got to be cold. So there's so much testing with commercializing a new technology, and that's just what they're going. But it sounds optimistic that Elon was saying 12 to 18 months where it'd be at volume production. So that's when I say Berlin, Austin are kind of non-factors this year. It's because they're not going to have the 4680. I think the 4680 now, in my opinion, what I thought was, early 2022 to be delivered and start really hitting its stride, I think is late 2022 to be hitting its stride. But that's not bad. That's just Tesla commercializing this crazy new technology and pushing. FSD version 9 rollout. We didn't get much on this, honestly. Lots of potential for recurring revenue from FSD subscription is what Kirkhorn says. But I don't know. I think Tesla, I'm going to be careful what I say here, but that crash. Okay, so we had this crash that Elon was asked about. I think Tesla is realizing that the press is a lot less forgiving than they like them to be. And frankly, 2,000 people that love Tesla, I think is so, that's an amazing beta group of beta testers. But as they roll this out to more people, more and more weird stuff's going to happen. And what did we see this week and last week? Like the press is ridiculous. They're not fair. They sort of grill Tesla every turn. They don't give them the unbenefit of the doubt, whatever that is, for every crash that it, is in a Tesla, on autopilot or not, on FSD or not. And so I think Tesla internally is grappling with this, saying like, wow, like the second we roll out FSD, these shorts are going to use anything they possibly can to make it look bad, to make it be a hiccup. And they're just going to magnify that times a million. And so I think that is something that Tesla's concerned about and is trying to balance as they get full self-driving ready is they're rethinking like, how bad of a PR problem is this? Is it better to do it slower than to force it out early and have something go wrong? Anyway, so my gut from this is that FSD is taking a little bit longer to go to the masses than I would have previously expected. Like I would have thought like June, everyone who buys FSD will have it, like, version 9. But now I'm thinking like July could be towards the end of summer. It's just a really hard problem. They talk about operating expenses going up. I mean, honestly, there wasn't like, they kind of confirmed that, Austin and Berlin are on track. That was great, but they didn't give us exciting updates on the 4680. They didn't give us exciting updates on FSD. It was kind of like they were very downplaying this quarter, which I think was interesting. I don't know, maybe it's better that Tesla does that. Like there's not all this crazy news and interesting stuff going on in the quarter. But honestly, I thought it was a little bit boring, like kind of like business as usual as Tesla. I mean, the new solar Powerwall pricing or like, I don't know. I guess the Tesla energy thing is kind of a very big deal because before you had solar, you had Powerwall. It was kind of like this janky little, they were both their own business. They're both kind of growing, but they're never growing and they're not hitting their targets. But, we're changing solar pricing. Now we're doing retrofit. We have Powerwall demand that's backlog, but now we're going to introduce the mega pack and start scaling that. Like it kind of felt like they were dabbling with a lot of different business models here. And maybe now they've really cracked that code with like, wait, what is the key? What is the puzzle piece that came into our Powerwall production's ramping? We figured that out. We can integrate it with the solar. We got the solar figured out. And now we have crypto to be an additional monetization avenue once we really get this set up. And that means it's all systems go. We can sell this as this whole renewable energy package. And so I think that is one of the biggest news to come out of this call. Additionally, on the Model Y production, I don't know. I think it's pretty awesome that Elon basically said it's going to be the best selling car in the world potentially by next year, even trucks. And so there's a million FSD, I saw your thing. There's a million Ford F-150s or Ford pickup trucks sold a year. So Elon basically says he thinks they can sell 1 million Model Ys next year. That's what I read in between lines of guidance. 1 million Model Ys in 2022 is what Elon and the team are projecting. I mean, that is pretty epic and insane. So that tells you how crazy the ramp is going to be. And I think it's because the Model Y is not relying on the 4680 in many ways. Like maybe the Model Y in Berlin will use 4680s from Fremont and be very limited, or maybe they'll switch it to 2170s. Like I think the Plaid was originally going to be all 4680s until that got delayed. So they did a lot of them with 2170s. I think there's a lot about that. Tesla gets an infrastructure deal from the federal government. That's interesting. Well, another thing that was mentioned on this was the carbon tax that Elon said he thinks should happen. We tax alcohol, we tax cigarettes. Why not tax carbon, things that are bad for the planet? I thought that was really interesting. And honestly, it's kind of a hot button political issue, but I'm big on the carbon tax. Like there's so many negative externalities that are not priced in with fossil fuels and carbon-based, energy that I think we need. I don't know. Yeah, that would be great. But I think you can never rely on government intervention and subsidies to be your catalyst for your investment thesis. But I mean, I think all things are firing on all cylinders of Tesla. I mean, wrap up of this quarter. You have awesome, another profitable, another, foot moving forward quarter, $1 billion in non-GAAP net income. And there's so many one-time items, 200 mil COGS on the Model S and X, Model Y still ramping early in Shanghai, the chip shortage. I think we had so many one-time items. Q1 seasonality always hits them, even though Elon said the demand this time kind of bucked that seasonality trend. So many things that went on this quarter, and yet Tesla still crushes it. And so I am more optimistic than ever that just Tesla building, metal and cars is they're getting really good at that. And we're setting up for like 30% structural gross margins by the end of this year, assuming no product ramps. And so that is a game changer. I'm taking this quarter as Tesla's core business is really stronger than ever. And FSD is taking a little bit longer. The 4680 is taking a little bit longer, but those things don't really matter. They're going to happen in due time. And so, that's my update. Dojo. It sounds like Tesla could get into this AWS-like business. I don't know. I think there's a big shoe to drop. I guess my last prediction that I've been ranting about, though, is this crypto product. I think Tesla's on the cusp of announcing a DIY crypto mining product with their Powerwall. Maybe. This is kind of like my moonshot. and you could click a button, you could mine Doge, you could mine Bitcoin, you could mine ETH, you could, maybe there's Tesla coin, like I don't know. But the idea that energy can be instantly monetized by a crypto network, and Tesla is the biggest and most exciting company to take advantage of that, is what I'm taking out of this call. Anyway, this is Hyperchange. I'm going to be coming out with more Tesla coverage this week. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Really appreciate all y'all tuning in and commenting during the video. Love seeing all that news. If you have any questions, maybe you can catch me before I sign off. But FSD beta news, none really. Just keep praying. Keep praying for the rollout. Yeah, they did dodge the FSD timeline question. So we are praying. Anyway, thank y'all so much for tuning in. See you next time. Have a great day. Happy Tesla earnings. Peace.